And welcome back to the episode of Geek Centurions. Me, boy Eli.
It's me, Joe.
And we're here to talk about Secret Invasion episode 2 and 3. We took a quick break to talk about the FPC and Xbox. Apparently, that's still pending, so we won't get an answer anytime soon.
Which happens with court cases a lot,
That happens a lot.
like especially with something like as big as a corporate consolidation and stuff. But anyways,
Anyways, we're talking about Marvel and their dealings with, you know,
the Secret Invasion storyline, right?
and all these wonderful machinations that the Skrulls have been doing. But essentially, yes, we'll be talking about that. We're also going to be talking about this recent conversation that people have been having about Secret Invasion, where the idea is, should this have been a movie? From what you have told me, some people have been talking about it more as an Avengers movie. From what I've heard, it should have been what Captain the Marvels movie should be.
Yeah, the Captain Marvel sequel, right?
Yeah, and yeah, so we're gonna be going ahead and talking about our thoughts on the first two episodes on these two episodes. More so, we'll give a quick synopsis on episode 2 than episode 3 because that was still fresh.
hmm
But yeah, so in episode 2, we essentially come back to the fact that Colby Smolder's character Maria Hill is officially dead. It's sad to see her go, but it sucks because it's technically considered fridging because it's used to like motivate um, Nick Fury. So it's not it's. I get why, and I also understand maybe you shouldn't have Chloe Smolders in here for too long. She probably has other stuff to do, but it kind of sucks the way it goes.
Yeah, and then yeah, in case you don't know what fridging means, it's pretty much just like you said, it's pretty much a character dying in order to motivate another character. And sometimes it can be executed properly, other times it's a little distasteful. Here, I think it's fine for the most part,
Hmm.
but I can understand why some people are like, hey, why, why is she dead and stuff. I mean, to be fair, you could probably, I don't know, you could still technically kind of have Coleman Silvers come back, kind of, but as a
Hmm.
scroll, you know. But yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I'm also of that
But yeah,
mindset.
anyways, yeah, like the second episode obviously comes back to the whole terror attack, pretty much, it's kind of plan kind of goes off without a hitch. Yeah, all the world's governments are kind of like, hey, why is this random American guy who's secretly a scroll, part of this radical group about America's not liking Russians, part of, seemingly behind this attack that's killed innocent people, and now the Russians are like, yeah, no, we want to go to war against the U.S. and stuff. And we see a lot of pundits and various things being like, this is all crazy, blah blah blah, what's going on? And only to learn that the Scroll Council is definitely deep within
Hmm.
certain parts of various government institutions. You know,
Was that episode 3?
no, that was in episode 2.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I binge watched both of these, so I'm kind of in the mix.
It kind of blended together, right?
Which is nice.
Yeah, a little bit, right? When
I will say this: at least this season, it feels a lot more paced better.
yeah, it does seem like these like if you were to watch these episodes all in a row, it does feel kind of neatly paced.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't seem like we're getting like some weird random filler stuff like with other like Marvel movies or not Marvel movies, like other like MCU like Disney Plus shows that have like kind of weird pacing issues,
Hmm.
right? Here it's like, okay, this seems pretty continuous. It seems like we have actual like nice ebbs and flows to the
Yeah,
episode, right?
yeah, and so I think it's really interesting that we're seeing like how far like the ladder is, right?
Uh-huh.
How much of the influence, and it feels very much like those like classic invader films, right? Like the idea of the other kind of stuff, right? With like we talked about before, where they live, and Invasion of the Body Snatchers, especially more they live and sort of stories similar to around that because like we find out in episode 3 that one of the people in charge is this sort of Sean Hannity kind of guy. and it's so interesting to see like his relationship with I was gonna say Talos, but that's not Talos. It's Gravick, right? And how his relationship with Gravick and how he kind of uses him to like spout this, fear mongering kind of stuff. It's kind of like it's one of those things where in my mind it explains so much, and like it doesn't, they don't go further into it because like the whole idea is that you should already know if this is what they're doing, you know, this is what they could be, setting up. And I don't know, it really caught my eye, man. I don't know, I really like that detail.
I mean, yeah, I get what you mean. Like, I mean, heck, it's kind of, it seems like kind of like a natural thing with the sort of like, the, hey, the scrolls are, secret invasion, right? They're behind the news. They're behind, the various world like
Mhm.
powers and stuff, like world leaders
Yeah.
are scrolls and stuff, and it's like, yeah, that adds to that suspense. Like, well, if these sort of if government officials that we're supposed to trust and the news that we're supposed to trust are all being controlled by scrolls and stuff, then who can we trust, kind of thing, right?
Hmm.
It adds to that nice little suspension and you know that sort of thing. And we do see, and heck,
I will say also, it's kind of interesting how they use it as like a backdrop for the relationship between Russia and the United States.
yeah, that is kind of a thing too, because I mean, heck, there's this whole panel of the European nations being like, "Hey, Rhodey, right? If he
Hmm.
comes to like sort of the U.S. defense is like, hey, Rhodey, like, why? Explain to me why we found images of Nick Fury. What's going on here? Is the U.S. going to do anything about this? What's the U.S. response? And Rhodey's pretty much just like, well, I mean, I don't think I can trust Russian-made images and stuff unless we get to analyze it. I mean, I'm
I'm
just
just
saying.
saying, guys. I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
I feel like you guys are putting the blame on us a little bit. This is a little,
Mhm.
it's a little suspect here. Some might even say a little sus, but I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of like that interesting like you know
Like real world kind of parallels, right?
and then the idea of trust, like how do we trust those, there's a lot of secrets going around because one of the things that happens in especially in episode 2 is that Talos was kind of keeping stuff from Fury, and one of that being that fact there was actually more scrolls than he thought there were, and that kind of got stuff really up. That essentially made Fury very upset, and it's kind of funny because the way it's set up is it's set up in this, this story of like, you know how Fury had to grew up in these sort of situations, how he had to rely on his mother, and like sort of the life that they had, right?
Hmm.
And like kind of baffled at the idea that Talos was kind of lying to him, but at the same time he kind of understands Talos' situation because like Fury was gone.
Well, not only that, but like, the scroll were, being systematically hunted by the Kree. He
Hmm.
felt like, yeah, this is really the only place we can possibly, Earth seems like the only safe haven that a lot of the scrolls have. So yeah, I just told some of them that, hey, Earth's safe for now.
Hmm.
Hopefully we can find a new home. And obviously Fury, because we learn in, obviously this episode, sort of the deal that Fury made, that, hey, listen, you guys can stay on Earth, but you got to, help me out. You know, protect Earth, basically, right? If you're gonna stay on Earth, you got to protect it, and that's why we sort of have, basically like the imply that, yeah, Fury used the scrolls as like secret agents and like, infiltrated various governments that would have various organizations as well that would have disrupted world peace and stuff,
Hmm.
you know. But now obviously it's like, hey, we've held up our end of the bargain, Fury. Where's our home? And
One of many times.
yeah,
And so that's sort of at the center of like Gravik's whole deal with Fury, right? The fact that hey, you're not holding up your end of the bargain, and like that leads to a very like intense episode, a moment with him and Talos, because for the most part, these two guys are friends. and it's implied they're very good friends.
Mhm.
But now it's like, oh, that's how it is, dude. And like it just trickles down into like Fury just kind of like being tired and done of this shit. Because like not only the death of Maria Hill, the confrontation with Maria Hill's mother, uh, but also the very like intense scene with him and Rhodey, where Nick's just like, "Come on, man, you got to help me out, man. You got to help me out." But Rhodey's very much, and I guess this is pretty obvious where it's gonna be leading to when it comes to Rhodey, but like the idea that, nah, dude, you've gone too far. We can't do anything with you.
Well, that and like, yeah, you kind of, you left without saying a word. You're working on the source stuff. Now you're back, and now you're sort of in all this stuff. We get that the scrolls are seemingly a problem here, but we're gonna handle it. You seem your way out of your league here, but sorry, but
Hmm
like like
The,
basically you can't handle this on your own. Let us handle this, bro.
and it's done in a way where it it also reminds us sort of like the world that kind of we live in with Fury still. This is a world that you don't see many people like him on power. So it's like kind of relating to the idea that the Skrulls are just like these outcasts, and sort of like they have to rely on certain aspects of people like them in power to make it through.
Mhm.
So there's sort of an analogy there going on that I kind of noticed. I might be the only one, or I might be like stretching it, but no, I thought it was pretty cool. But yeah, the episode essentially ends with us finding out, how essentially connected. Because we always knew that Nick was very connected with the Skrulls. He kind of like resonated with them, and now we find out why he resonates to them so much. Not just because similar stories, but also his wife is one.
Yeah, we learned that Nick Fury has a wife
Mhm.
and she is a scroll. So that is kind of yeah, one of those interesting things to pop up.
Which, unlike that, Nick Fury would shack up with with an alien. He's probably done it before.
I mean, knowing how the Marvel universe works, I mean, Peter Quill has hooked up with some aliens, so like it doesn't seem like it's out of
Not
the
out of
question. Yeah,
not
out
out
of
of
the
the realm.
question, right? Like that
Yeah,
it's possible. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting sort of revelation, and it adds like another layer of like Fury does not only has like an actual stake of like, hey, I gotta protect the Earth, the Scrolls, they're my responsibility basically, and I fucked up, I gotta fix this, but also, yeah, I've he has a relationship with a Scroll, and like that adds another layer of like kind of like how did this end up going as the relationship, right? And how do we like
like where does the wife stand in all this, right?
right, because obviously,
She
like
understands the issues with the scrolls, but she also, understands Fury, which is kind of leads us into like the next episode where, you know, Fury being gone kind of like ruined her a bit. She had no one in her home. She was like distraught, and she found comfort in her fellow scrolls. And so like the question is like how where does she stand in this? How much does she know, right?
uh
And it's that kind of stuff, and it's a very interesting dilemma because throughout specifically episode 3, I feel like there's a lot of like relationships between people, right? Talos and Fury with his wife, Talos with his family, his wife, his daughter, and all this stuff. I think we just also forget to mention I forget what was her name. The
Gaia.
Gaia, yes, she has a very important role so far, where she's kind of like the informant for her dad.
Yeah, like she obviously is kind of convinced by her dad in the first episode, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, listen, Gravick's not who he says he is, or kind of like like you can pretty much implying that he had a hand in the death of her mom, and like
Hmm.
he's like, okay, I'm gonna help you, dad, basically, right? And she is kind of like she pretty much is like an informant going behind the scenes figuring stuff out. Which there was a thing in that second episode that she kind of, or was it? Yeah, it was the second episode, right?
Yeah, it's because there earlier another female character whose name I forget. Um, but she essentially like she tortures a scroll, and it's
Yeah,
wow.
she's that British spy lady we met in the first episode who says like, "Oh, I've been dealing with scrolls, pretty much."
Yeah.
So she's kind of like another person that like is trying to like handle the secret invasion stuff, but doing her own thing, obviously.
Hmm.
And she's very more brutal and
There was a moment I was like, oh wait, this is supposed to be a Disney Plus show.
a little bit, yeah. She definitely tortures a man or a scroll
Yeah,
to get
a band
information.
scroll.
Well, I mean, yeah, but yeah, and it's like. He, I mean, obviously, doing that to a human would kill them, but because it's a scroll, they can handle it. But also, not fun when you're getting like your fingers chopped off.
Hmm.
You know?
And but yeah, no, she has a role in that she's kind of like leaking stuff out for Talos, and also like some of the police, I guess, because that was a plot point in that episode where like they found their hideout. So, oh well, we guess we got to find a new hideout. But yeah, no, it's interesting because like uh, you know, I want to call her Tara, but her name's not Tara.
It's Gaia.
Gaia. Well, they're both Earth.
Well, yeah, I know where you're getting at. That's why you're confused.
Yeah. But what I like is that Gaia's kind of starting to see like, oh, my dad might be right.
Yeah, I mean, heck, we do see a lot of stuff from the second and third episode of like other scrolls, particularly like one scroll from the scroll council being like, everybody else is like, yeah, we agree with you, Talos, not Talos, Gravick. Let's wage war against the humans. Let's go with your plan, your secret invasion stuff. And it's like one of them's like, no,
This is wrong.
this is extremely messed up, you guys. This is not cool at all. We should not be doing this. It's gonna probably bite us in the ass, and it's kind of like one of those
It's
interesting where you feel like because Gravick has been shown in these past couple of episodes to be very ruthless,
mhm.
pretty much like
Even to his own, and which is what I'm saying about the whole like Gaia situation, because
yeah, because yeah,
Gaia sees how ruthless he's been.
yeah, like straight up, like this guy talks about wanting to create a new home for Skrulls, but he basically just kills anyone who even dissents, and like maybe will like, you know,
Hmm.
because like pretty much like all the people that follow him have a lot of like this like fierce loyalty to him, but once they mess up or do something that he feels like is not part of the plan or like he feels like might be compromised, he just gets rid of them immediately.
Yeah, yeah. Those is the moment where
They saved the tortured dude, even though like the guy like says like I didn't tell him anything. I told him all the
he was
surprise,
saying it for fear of his life.
and even then he was like, "Nah, I still can't trust you, bro. Sorry."
Yeah, because he was I'm scared of you, but I'm scared of Gravick even more.
Yeah, because he will like anyone who even remotely betrays like you know any doubt.
I will happily take a beating before
Any
God comes to
yeah,
me. Well, that's
yeah.
not what happens, but like,
No, he's very much defiant, but obviously, torture gets a lot of people, right?
yeah.
But anyways, yeah, Gaia sees all this messed up stuff, and he just convinces her even more to like be willing to be like an informant, letting Talos know about this plot in episode 3 about uh the scrolls in the infiltrating a UK like a you know a submarine operated by the United Kingdom
Hmm.
that's going to fire upon a U.S. Airplane bound for the UN to pretty much even ignite even more discord and chaos because obviously it's like why is the UK attacking the US? That's crazy, blah blah. Blah. And so she informs Talos, and heck, Talos even has like this whole like meeting with
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 Gravick.
Gravick, pretty much kind of like trying to like reason with him a little bit.
It's a battle of ideologies.
Yeah, very much. Gravick's like, hey, listen, all right, you you're you failed us,
Hmm.
right? My plan, we're gonna, take out all the humans. We're gonna rule, we're gonna take over Earth. This is payback for all this stuff. Humanity doesn't deserve to live, basically.
Yeah.
Like they do this to themselves. We're just gonna, speed up the process. And Talos is like, dude, you do not know humans like I do. Because once they learn about you guys and their plot, you know, like through, they're basically gonna just
Hmm.
turn all on you and will take you down. Because the one thing that humans do well is that, fight against the common foe, especially one, that's willing to do the things you're doing.
Yeah.
So,
It,
basically he's like, stand down or else I can pretty much just leak this entire plan to the right sources and they're gonna come after you, dude.
it's also the fact that like when push comes to shove, like humanity will fight back, and that's kind of like what Talos is saying. Like they will fight. They will not go quietly into that good night.
Yeah, which, I mean, to be fair, Gravick kind of understands that a little bit, especially when it comes to, you know, the Avengers and
Hmm.
stuff. Which is why later in the episode we see like stuff that's been hinting in like earlier episodes that Gravick's like actual plan. Well, it has like a major like fallback plan of having a machine that pretty much alters their DNA to give them even like make them super scrolls, if you will.
Yeah, that's the big plot point in that episode, and we're not gonna say how they're gonna do it because I feel like that's gonna be a thing all into itself. But the idea of this is how far they're willing to go, and this is an idea that scares Gaia, and just really just again emphasizes like how far this man is willing to go. Because like even back to the discussion he has with the council, they're all the one scroll lady is like, we can't be like what our apprentices are. This 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 isn't right.
Yeah, like she's pretty much like, you guys do realize that the Kree hunted us down, and now we're gonna do the same thing to the humans that the Krees did to us.
Mhm.
Like this
But
sort
no,
of
it's
like
different. It's different. It's different.
like implying, that sort of thing. But it is interesting though that she is allowed to leave and like not be killed.
Hmm.
That's probably like the one interesting thing. It's like, yeah, like Greg's like, yeah, listen, I still respect you. You can leave. Like
Hmm.
we won't after you, but yeah, this is our council now. You can leave.
Yeah. Well, it was clearly he meant to do that to get Tal's attention. But no, I think that's really much an interesting like aspect. It's just one of those things where like you know, do we do what the others on do onto us kind of shit, right? Like, is that the correct thing to do? For some, it might be yes. For some others, it might be no. We kind of need to be better. And I mean, for me personally, I feel like that lady has a point because it's kind of like it's a cycle of like screwing each other over. And it's gonna keep going until like at some point no one's around, and it's very self destructive. I'm not so I kind of understand where she's coming from, and I think that's kind of like the point, right? This is a
Hmm.
very self destructive nature. We can't allow this to go on.
Right.
Hence why she talks to Talos and be like, hey, fucking knock some sense into this dude. That no, we can't do that.
Hmm.
He's very gun ho about it. Um, but yeah, not to go further into the what happens in episode 3, but essentially, it leaves us in a point where we're very much interested to see where it can go off. Right? It's we still have like 3 episodes left, but it's paced so well where I'm like, okay, okay, nothing feels rushed. Stuff is happening, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, we're yeah, obviously left with like, what is Fury's wife's connection to the rest of the scrolls? Is she maybe sympathetic to Gravick? We don't know.
Mhm.
Oh, obviously, who else is a scroll, right? That's obviously a big thing. Maybe,
How far does the chain of command go?
right.
Because we did find out that one of the council members is that Sean Hannity esque character.
And I mean, also one of them is like the main dude behind the UN, and one of them is the UK Prime Minister. So yeah, there's quite a few, there are a few scrolls in positions of power. So it does leave that note of like who else is a scroll here, and are like any prominent characters that we know are scrolls, and what are Fury and Talos gonna do now?
Hmm.
Like are they pretty much it's just sort of like what's the next big move? Will Gravick be able to like unleash his super scroll plan?
Hmm.
Like what's next kind of thing. That's probably one of the big things of the show. I think to its credit is that it does leave a lot of wanting of answers and just like okay, where does this gonna go?
Hmm.
And we are basically like halfway through the season or like the series because yeah, it's like a 6 episode like mini series. So we reached the halfway point. How are the next like 3 episodes gonna go? Right?
Yeah. And I guess that brings us to the question of and the thing we were talking about earlier, whether or not this should have been a movie or just a series. Um, I kind of think a series makes a lot more sense than a movie.
I understand that. And I think this is a take I saw on various message boards that like there's some people that are kind of just like the scrolls should have been their own phase of Marvel,
Hmm.
you know, like, and that's sort of where the whole like it should have been an Avengers movie kind of thing, right? Like it would have been cool to see like a build up to a scroll secret invasion and have it conclude with an Avengers movie, right?
Yeah,
Which I can kind of see that, but at the same time, like I don't know. It's a
it goes. It's a plot thread that I feel would go too long, right? Like
yeah,
how do we connect? Like because already you can argue that they're having an issue with connecting stories for the idea of the of like secret wars and like the multiverse and all that stuff,
hmm
right? And there's a lot of conversations about that already. And making something like Secret Invasion, I feel, would be just as you know strenuous, right? Because part of like you know the appeal of Secret Invasion, right, is that oh it's going on the whole time, right? And like it's supposed to be like a out of nowhere twist.
right. Like, cause in the comics, it feels like it kind of retroactively like
Hmm.
implies that some moments were because it was because they were a scroll at the time,
Yeah,
basically.
which they didn't utilize as often as I heard, but I mean that would have been really cool.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to see that in like maybe the MCU, like we would get like
Hmm.
past like shots of older films and being like, oh, this character was actually a scroll the whole time, right? Which I mean, again, it would be interesting, but at the same time, I kind of agree. Like there is a part of it that feels like it might overstay its welcome. I mean, granted, you could argue like there were hints of like secret invasion stuff anyway, because we did get, say, Far From Home. Nick and Maria Hill in that movie were Talos and like
Hmm.
another scroll, just being Nick and Maria because hey, Nick was off starting sword and stuff. So you know,
Where do we go from there?
yeah, like there's like other like
Yeah.
there's like clearly like moments in like other stuff. I mean,
Hmm.
heck, WandaVision. I think there was an operative who was a scroll, right? Who talks to uh Monica,
Yes, yes.
right? It's like, hey, we need you up at Sword, and Fury wants to talk to you and stuff.
I think it also was. I think that also another thing would be the problem is that the way they introduced the scrolls, right? Because in the comics, scrolls were always very kind of villainous, right?
Yeah, that was always like the Skrulls thing. Like they were a shape shifting alien species, so they were kind of written from the get go to be a very villainous race.
Hmm.
They would
Like,
transform into anybody, and
yeah,
like
the it's sort of like the Red Scares idea, who among us kind of stuff. But
hmm
by the time they were introduced in Captain Marvel, they were treated more as like you know refugees, right? The idea that these people are they look like us, they're not us, but all they want is to find a home.
yeah, like the Kree pretty much exterminate. they destroy the scroll home world, and like they're scattered and they're just hunting them down. And yeah, and that they all they want is a home
Yeah,
of their
which
own.
is like for me, like it's very much an allegory about people of immigrants and all that stuff, kind of thing going on, which is which I totally understand what they're going for, and I think that's a really cool idea. So I think like if they wanted to do like a secret invasion, I think it kind of has to like be established, which is why I feel like the way they're doing it now makes a lot more sense. It feels more involved, and I think it works for what it's doing. Right? It's not the way it is in the comics because that's not how they set it up to be like how it is in the comics, right? Because like Secret Invasion was made in like in between 2000 and 2010 kind of stuff, where already having a long history of villainous intent makes sense for it to happen. Here, you're gonna have to like really delve into like you know explaining why they would turn villainous, and it makes more sense for the way this show is structured for that to be explained, rather than saying something like in a movie where we get bits and pieces.
Hmm.
Instead, this is all my thought process. Maybe they could have done it better, right? Maybe they could have, but I'm not sure. We're very much talking hypotheticals, right?
And I think the other thing about it too is that you really couldn't do like say a scroll Captain America or a scroll Iron Man at this point in the MCU because obviously Tony is dead in the MCU. Captain America, he's an old man now in the MCU. There's a lot of other like pretty much it's like a good chunk of like core characters of like the Avengers team aren't really like you couldn't
Skrulls.
like yeah you couldn't really like find excuses or argument excuses of like bringing old characters back and saying oh they're a scroll because obviously it's like hey Black Widow's back but wait that's impossible she died in game that clearly she's a scroll.
Hmm.
The pretty much it's like the suspense of like who is a scroll who isn't a scroll has to be put on characters like they're kind of always been kind of side characters. Like I know there's a lot of theories going around that Rhodey is a scroll, and whether or not that's going to be true, I mean, that's the whole point of speculation.
Yeah,
But like you can't like really do that with like say like you can only do that with say with Rhodey because like he's like probably the only character that has a lot of like uh
the screen time is
screen
like
time in like the older films, but also who who has a connection with say like the U.S. government because he's War Machine. He's a soldier and stuff for the U.S.
mhm.
government. So obviously that makes sense. Uh, but anyways, yeah, it's like one of those things where like it feels like yeah, like in an ideal world, you would want to say like do something like what the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes did.
Yeah, they did it perfectly.
Yeah, like trying to do something like that, but like given how the MCU is and how it was sort of planned out, like it does seem like from the get go when the show was announced, it was never gonna truly be like a one-to-one adaptation of the comics, which is fine
Yeah, because you don't have to have it be a one-to-one
as long as
adaptation.
you're adapting the themes. I think of the original story.
Mm.
I think it's a pretty solid adaptation, and which I think I think we said it before. I think the show does it very well. At the same time, I feel like it's just kind of weird to like set up a whole phase of being just scrolls because either you're just doing like because obviously when you think about the phases of Marvel, you're either talking about the three phases that lead up to like the big thing, like say the Infinity Saga,
Hmm.
or you're just talking about like phase one, phase two, phase three kind of thing. And I feel like if you're talking about like that kind of thing, where like oh phase four should be actually just be Secret Invasion and stuff, and it's like that feels kind of rushed when you think about it though, right?
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Like because when you think about like the other like when the first three phases of Marvel, right? Obviously, phase one ends with Avengers, fighting Loki, right? Phase two, basically, I mean, yeah, it ends with like Ant Man being the last phase two movie, but the whole crux of the event is just Age of Ultron, right? That sort of like lays
Hmm.
the seeds down for phase three and stuff. And I think it goes back to the thing I always said it was kind of interesting about this latest the multiverse saga for the MCU where there isn't really like a big like crescendo like movie that ends the phases. like that wraps up like certain story arcs or whatever. It also sets up new ones. Like there isn't anything like that. Like Phase
Hmm.
4 doesn't really have like a movie that like sort of like wraps things up. It's more like, hey, here's just a bunch of stuff that's going on in the universe right now.
I think that's also a pretty issue with Phase 4. It doesn't feel finished.
Yeah, it kind of just like it's a bunch of stuff that happens. You know, there
Yeah,
isn't a cohesive like thing that brings stuff together or like sets things about. I mean, I
yeah,
guess it just the whole point of Phase 4 in terms of like the larger thing is like, hey, multiverse stuff, No Way Home, Multiverse of Madness, Loki, which sets up the multiverse.
yeah. Yes, I mean, yeah, it's kind of the weird thing. I mean, also like when I think about it back into the in the comics, like they had an excuse where they could like, oh, that guy was like a scroll the whole time. You just didn't know when he got turned. There's not enough time for us to really like or like reasonable explanations as to when that person was turned into a scroll.
Yeah, because then it retroactively makes things for the MCU like,
Like if they did it like say like um Black Widow survived or whatever. It's like no, it was a scroll the whole time. It's like wait, okay, but when? When did she turn into a scroll, right?
mhm,
In the comics where you have like certain like numbers of issues and changes and like retcons are gonna be a thing, it makes sense, right?
uh-huh.
Like Hank Pym was a scroll the whole time. Oh, when did he turn? It's like around that time, yeah, that's when he got turned. Oh, that actually makes sense, kind of stuff, right? And when it works, because like within the comic, there's enough like time where you can like kind of just write that and say, no, yeah, Osborn, he was a scroll. Captain America, he was a scroll. Here, there's not enough time for it, and it feels really awkward if we just threw that in the middle. You would have to take a lot of planning kind of stuff to do it to get it down right. But yeah, I mean, we could have made it into a Marvels movie, but I feel like it'd be more of a scroll thing than it would be a Captain Marvel thing. You know, and she needs more character stuff than most of the other characters right now.
Yeah, I guess I kind of agree with that. Um, but yeah, no. The point is, it's like there's a lot of interesting things you could have. There's a lot of interesting things you could do with the Secret Invasion storyline. I think what they're doing is probably the best you can do with the circumstances of the MCU at this point of time.
Hmm.
And the thing about it too is like it's not only like an adaptation of the Secret Invasion storyline. It's a like I think the main thing about it is that it's a pretty interesting like character study on Nick Fury and where he is at this sort of point of time of his life. You know, like obviously like the big revelation that yeah he has a wife and she's a scroll. Yeah, that's interesting.
Hmm.
Like what there's a lot of cool things that go on with that. Like clearly like Secret Invasion wasn't just gonna be like, hey, we're doing Secret Invasion, we're doing all that cool like stuff there. It's also just, hey, let's dive deeper into Nick Fury's character, who we haven't really like. Yeah, he's been around in the movies and like pretty much just sort of like a background character, and yeah, but we get to like really delve into his character, where he is, like what's his his background is basically now, right?
Hmm.
This whole sort of like where he pretty much is just like a deep dive into Nick Fury, as well as just, oh yeah, he also is gonna have to save the world from the Skrulls now.
Yeah, it's also one of those moments where like, oh, we get to see how this world has affected other people, right? Especially with like the blip and stuff, because that's also like part of his story, and it's really interesting to see how like not only has that affected him, but also his family and where he is with all this crazy stuff. But I think this will be a continuous discussion, right? Because it's one. I think a lot of people really enjoy the show. Two, I think there's a lot of people that wish it was more like the comic. Sad part is most of the time you're not gonna get what you want. I think that's kind of how it is, right?
No, I mean, I definitely yeah, agree with that, especially when it comes to adaptations. Like there are just some things that
Hmm.
can't or won't be adapted for various things.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think just to wrap it up, at the end of the day, yeah, I think it is kind of a neat discussion of where the Secret Invasion storyline could have gone.
Hmm.
but I don't think it necessarily discredits the show for what it is right now because I think it is a
No,
good show.
no. It's one of those shows where like even if it's not like the source material, it still captures the essential feel of it, right?
Hmm.
I think that's what essentially matters. But anyways, guys, I think that's a good place to end it. If you like what you heard, be sure to follow us on all social medias, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at the Geek Centurions. And if you like what you heard, be sure to follow us there on Instagram. We're most active on. We'll probably find a link to the podcast and sites we're officially a part of, like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, all the like, and a link to the YouTube for all you audio listeners out there who want to put a face to the voice. And yeah, we do have a Patreon there for any sort of form of support. But yeah, guys, if you like Skin Racers, let us know. And yeah, it's been me, your boy Eli.
It's been me,
You
Joe.
guys have a good one. Peace.